Hello, hello. Welcome everybody to the show. Can you hear me okay? Fib, how do I sound? Audience, how do I sound? Please send some GMs into the chat if everything goes okay. And Fib, you can do a quick audio test on you as well. I think you're muted. Oh, there we go. Nice catch early on in the show.
Good catch.
There we go.
Yes, you sound excellent, Simon. Thank you. I hope I sound better now.
You do. Crystal clear. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Today, we're going to have an amazing show with a special guest. But before we get to that, let me introduce myself. I'm Simon, lead of Super Team Canada. And joining me today is...
I'm Fib, or Fibonacci, and I'm the lead of business development and digital assets for Super Team Canada.
That's great. Good to have you. Welcome, everybody. And as you know, Super Team Canada does its best to support all Canadian founders working in the ecosystem. And today we're kind of focusing on the Coliseum Frontier Startup Competition. So we'll be covering all of that and more today, as well as our special guest, Nam, which we'll get to in just 2 minutes. But before we go into that, just want to give some quick high-level oversight into what the Coliseum Frontier is. It is a global startup competition. It runs from April 6th to April 11th. I think there's over 2.5 million in pre-seed allocation available up for grabs, as well as over, I think it's like, 250K in prizes, sidetracks, excellent prizes available for you for your startup competition. We have a bunch going on with Super Team. We have the Build Station happening next week in Toronto. It's a week-long hacker house style co-working event running 24/7. And we have a bunch of online workshops for you to help you grow and build your startup and potentially win the Coliseum Startup Competition. Before we jump into Nam, Fib, is there anything I left out on the high level?
Yes, I just want to tease that we have some incredible perks coming for Canadian builders. So we're going to throw a QR code up on screen to register for Coliseum. It's called a hackathon, but it's really a startup competition. So if you're already building something or you have an idea, now is your time. We're going to have amazing perks, including Amazon Web Services credits and potentially some other credits from our members, which I will not spoil. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you, and GM to everybody in the chat, Demeju, RT, Hugo, Frisk, Aping, Cowboy, Mass, Sammy, good to see you all. And let's get into our special guest. So let's do a quick transition, and Nam, if you could join us on the stage.
Awesome.
There we go. Good to have you, and welcome to the stage, Nam. Good to see you. How are you feeling?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here and working through the wonders of audio and video issues, getting this organized.
Thank you very much for being here. Yeah, let's dive right into it. I know there's a bit of a history. I know you just did a podcast with Andrew Forte that was released, I think this week or just last week. So if we do want to get into the details of your history, I definitely recommend that people go watch Andrew Forte's podcast. But just a very quick 60-second TLDR. What was it like building in the Solana ecosystem back in 2021? Where did you get your roots from?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get into Sol in early 21, just coming in more so of like a trader or kind of like an exploration mindset, right around once, the formation of Anchor protocol was getting pushed out and how all these other things were getting organized. From there, was lucky enough to get involved in the NFT ecosystem, get alongside a bunch of the great people inside of MonkeyDAO. And then continue to figure out how I was going to be involved across a number of different areas, whether it was on the governance angle, whether it was on building out protocols, and now in kind of like my investor or I guess organizational mindset.
Perfect. And Fib?
Yeah, so sorry, for people watching, Nam isn't just a builder, he's also an active investor in Solana projects, and that's really a big part of what we want to dig into today, so let's go for it.
Exactly. So you've invested in a number of projects in the Solana ecosystem, Nam. High level, what are you most excited about right now? I know there's a lot going on in the ecosystem. We can talk about some security projects that you might be more interested into, maybe some advice for OPSEC, anything you want to dive into off the bat.
Yeah, I think right now, obviously, there's a lot of interest inside of the RWA space, and there has been for the last 12 to 24 months in terms of what does it take to bring real yielding assets right now that exist primarily off chain that are hard for people to get access to or to even really have an understanding of, and turning it into essentially on chain yield generation or an asset that becomes much more easy to compose inside of DeFi. So from there, the Unray guys are probably one of the best kind of like reinsurance protocols right now that's getting a lot of attention on Solana. So they're, I think, a prime product right now for anybody who is a yield or looping enjoyer. Obviously, Prime itself has been pretty big over the course of the last few months. But I think you're also seeing the evolution of a lot of these different RWA products into the collectible space. And that's just going to continue where we get more and more of these esoteric financial products that didn't have either good oracles or easy ways for people to get exposure that are now getting pushed on chain. We'll see what of those end up floating to the top over the course of the next couple of years.
Interesting. In your opinion, though, when you look at the current landscape of Solana, let's say DeFi, consumer apps, DePIN, gaming, where do you think the biggest opportunities are that founders are not paying enough attention to?
Yeah, I think right now there's definitely a war over yields on whether it's AMMs in DeFi, organizing perp dexes, Launchpad's obviously another huge narrative inside of the space. Right now, I think the consumer-focused apps just don't have nearly enough love into them, and I include gaming into a lot of that vertical, and that's primarily just around the usage numbers of what we're seeing in terms of what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. There are still user numbers, right, of people who are trading, who are participating in a bunch of these different areas, but people are not necessarily going into GameFi. People are not necessarily going into a consumer app or a SocialFi application right now. Because the previous cycle, I think a lot of those products didn't work or didn't get to the point of what people were really looking for. So from there, right, we're now figuring out how can we continue to build things that people are going to be a lot more exciting. And with the advance of a lot of these different financial primitives, what else can we do to get people more and more involved in understanding like, hey, there's more that you can do on chain than just purely financial products. But that comes into a lot of the friction area right now, like how you actually use crypto versus how you're going to be participating in a traditional Web 2 application.
Yeah, speaking of consumer products, you are the co-founder of Moonwalk Fitness, which is definitely a consumer-forward product. I think maybe that was one of your first consumer-forward products that you kind of co-founded, and I want to know what you learned from that you didn't really expect in launching that kind of product.
Yeah, I think this has definitely gotten to the point where it is one of the more successful apps that we've seen on Solana in terms of the seeker usage. It's been great in terms of way to get people out in the community, get them active. It's done its job as I think a consumer crypto application. What it hasn't done is onboard people who are not crypto focused users or people who use this in its daily active life. It's not something where it's taking somebody who currently uses Strava or any of these other fitness applications and onboarded them onto crypto. And that's where I think there's still a really large area to attack in terms of how are you going to get people interested or excited about these things. For lack of a better word, right? Like we have done a really good job onboarding people on the financial aspects of blockchain. We haven't really done a good job of onboarding people onto like the usage aspects of blockchain. And maybe that's because those aren't at a point yet where people are going to be comfortable with them. And it may just be something where there is still too much friction going over custody. We talked about security and all these other problems before, but really getting people to go from the idea of like self-custody or self-management of a lot of their data, I think is going to become more relevant in the next little bit. And ideally people will figure out the ways to either get compensated for ownership of their data or how it's being utilized, or just going to be a little bit more conscious of how they're pushing that out there. And I think that plays out over the course of the next 12 to 24 months, once people realize exactly how much data is being collected on you by all these different services.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very forward-looking insight, and obviously as a founder, you have to be forward looking and have a great vision, but also be executing what is real, what is happening right now. Now, from an investor perspective, what are the common patterns and characteristics that you see in founders that do end up succeeding?
Yeah, I think on a specific enough time frame, being too early is also the case of being wrong. For something like this, the parallel that I'll draw, right, is like if you were involved in Google Glasses, right, like early on, almost a decade ago, right, that was viewed as something where it just wasn't realistic. The product was too heavy, too bulky. People didn't really utilize it in the ways that it was expecting. It was too slow. And now you're at the point, right, where you have automated smart glasses via Meta, to the point where people are getting very comfortable with the idea of AR displays inside of their lifespan. And that's something that's just going to continue to expand. In the section, those go from, there's a couple of cool startups that I think are transitioning, going from physical things that you have on your face in terms of glasses, into, contact lenses and other areas that you're going to be able to get, much easier to interact with. But to turn that into patterns or characteristics of things that are going to be forward looking, right? The goal needs to be that you have enough small wins and things that you're excited about, that can keep people very active and interested in what you have going on. We live in a very, very active part of crypto, I would say, in terms of like the startup or building space. So one, if you don't have enough hyper interesting things that people are going to be returning to over the course of 6-12 months, you're just not going to be able to capture enough attention. And you need to have enough small building blocks that you can continue to show success for your longer term vision, right? But if you just push something like, oh, in 3 years, I'll build a really cool product and people are going to be interested and excited about it, the space will change too rapidly and it'll pass you by, and you might miss the opportunity to transition or to come up with new ideas or new opportunities.
Yeah. On that note, like being too early or being too late, and kind of timing yourself right in the ecosystem, in the funnel of activities that happen in this world. And to wrap up the conversation around like where you invest yourself and your time with Bonk, like how many integrations do you guys have now with Bonk?
Yeah, so counting integrations in terms of something where you're like actively utilizing the token or interacting with it, there's about 450 now integrations that are actively utilizing the token on a weekly basis, right? Obviously, those are pretty heavily distributed in between, things where it's just utilized as either a gas token or a purchase, into things where it's a core part of the engagement or feedback loop.
How should how should founders think when they are building with the ecosystem versus alongside the ecosystem or on top of the ecosystem? Like, you guys are talking to a lot of different protocols all the time. When do you learn to say no, and which directions do you kind of go in?
Yeah, saying no is difficult, right? Because it's something where we always want to work on the idea of interesting or cool products that could work, that could succeed. I've talked about this on a few other areas where the only way that you get the 1000x outcome is by taking something that looks very risky or doesn't necessarily make sense as a consensus bet at the time. That's going even further out on the risk table, or going way further up there. I think now, as Bonks become a lot more established, and as we're looking at what the future is going to entail, now we're organizing this idea of, okay, how can we get more base hits? How can we get more opportunities where we're seeing success, where we're helping to grow out the revenue of Bonks ecosystem, where we're utilizing kind of the brand and the community that we've worked with over the course of the last few years, and make stuff that they're going to be excited about that's also going to be beneficial long term. So transitioning the idea of everything has to be a moonshot into, okay, what's going to be the next success?
Mm-hmm. That's difficult.
Yeah.
Not easy. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of organizations have spent many years trying to perfect the art and science of selecting winning startups. Let's dig into that a little bit more and what you look for in founders and pitches. When a founder comes to you with a pitch, what is the very first thing that you look at?
Yeah, I think in general, the first thing that I'm going to be looking at is, what's the longer term vision of this product? Is it something that is sustainable as a way to just disrupt, existing business model? The classic one is, oh, if we just get 1% of this global market share, we'll be worth this much money. Those are easier comparisons or ideas to understand, but what I really look for now is, what does it mean to become a leader in a product vertical, or what's the opportunity to take over to create something new? Just because I think, especially right now, it's very difficult with a lot of the entrenched players, in order to just have an understanding on how you're going to break through into these different areas. The wonderful part of TradFi and a lot more of the financial institutions coming in is now the competition set for people to build startups inside of the space is a lot more difficult. And they have to be pretty nimble in the idea of like, okay, we're going to adapt and not just make something where an open AI change to something like OpenClaw destroys their business model, right? Things like that are going to just happen inside of the ecosystem, especially when you're relying on third parties or other areas. So I really just look for, what's something that either is going to massively disrupt an existing like part of the space, or what's something that nobody else is building and nobody else could build.
That's what you're looking for, but what makes you immediately just close the tab, not respond, shut it down, kind of from a pitch deck or somebody trying to pitch you something, which is like an automatic no?
I don't think I have anything where it's an automatic no. I try to give the vast majority of these things, the benefit of the doubt, and the opportunity to just kind of see whether or not something's going to be successful. What I'll turn it into is, if this is something where people are again just trying to get like a certain amount of like a small market share, or they're just trying to say that we're going to make the AI version of the next product or something else is going to be successful. That is just something where I think it's a lack of vision or ideas, and it's not as interesting. So I guess if it seems like something that's played out, or I've seen it way too many times before, maybe that'll turn into the automatic no.
You don't want another NFT marketplace?
I think there is a massive spot for another NFT marketplace, primarily because most of these things have been turning down. I think right now the existing idea of marketplaces just being the areas where we're trading the JPEGs themselves, and we're hoping that there's going to be this massive interesting part of the market that is suddenly just going to perk up and start buying NFTs. It would be great if we got back to 2021 volumes in these things, but that's probably not going to happen unless the incentives change and people suddenly have a reason to buy it. So I don't think that like a new or like a different NFT marketplace model couldn't work. But I think right now the idea of just like, oh, we're going to build another version of Tensor, we're going to build another version of Magic Eden, and it's just going to work out, that's probably not as interesting. But turning into the ideas of like, what do RWA NFTs actually look like? What do these other products turn into? That sort of thing is actually interesting to me for an NFT marketplace.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of a team's history, how important is it to you that a team or a founder has shipped something before? And can a strong a strong idea with no MVP win you over?
Yeah, what I'd look for is small successes. This is something that I've talked about a lot. It's very hard to come out of the gate and have the first thing that you build just be a massive hit, right? Because if you haven't gone through the development cycle, or you haven't gone through the operational cycle of like getting a product up, live, launched with users, there's just a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that can go wrong in that area. So I'm not looking for anybody to be an immediate second-time founder and have had a previous successful exit or something's been acquired, right? Like it doesn't need to be that, but I do want to see it as like, I've shipped this product, it's seen this many users, I learned these things from it. That's very, very useful. Again, and if you're going into a hackathon, or this is your first project where you're coming up with this idea of like, oh, I have this, I want to build it out, that's totally fine, because that's what these venues are for. But when you're going out, building out a pitch deck, wanting to raise something for people to invest in, ideally just having some sort of track record, whether it's large or small. The idea of just like, I've taken an app and I've shipped it into production and it has users and you can go look at it. That's a huge sign of confidence for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've raised a couple times in the past, mostly through like Web3 connected projects. In your experience now, these days, how do you feel like the landscape has changed, especially for like the crypto AI merging or not merging narratives, and like traditional fundraising versus Solana Web3 fundraising, and these founders that are entering into the Coliseum, like how should they be framing that to VCs right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different times at which you can raise where that answer is going to be different. Right now, if you're looking inside of the existing crypto ecosystem, VC investment as a whole is pretty low. You're still seeing rounds and things that are participating, but they're getting a little bit less and less, attention or attraction. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just need to move something. It's fine in terms of like, oh, you have a pitch deck and you want to go out and raise something. There are funds that are still deploying. There's people who are still interested. That is still existing. But what you're not necessarily seeing right now is the idea of, there's a $1 billion fund trying to deploy into crypto infrastructure or architecture. I think a lot of those opportunities right now are not necessarily happening, versus the idea of people getting ready to build kind of the next, picks and shovels on the AI market. What you do still have the opportunity of is there's tons of different groups, Coliseum obviously being one of them, where the idea of like, let's build out a product, let's get some users or some interest going on, and that turning into a fundraising round that then you can turn into something like a token launch via MetaDAO, or something like Seedplex working on the ideas of making it easier to raise funds and build out a company. Like those style of raises I think are still very possible right now, but it is important to just recognize that like you are in a pretty depressed part of the crypto market where you're seeing a lot of the venture capital funding that's being deployed is actually right now into mergers and acquisitions of large scale businesses, right? Like you're more likely to see Stripe acquiring fintechs for $1 billion. That doesn't necessarily mean that there was $1 billion of funding that was just available that anybody could have taken 2 or 5 million out of, right? That stuff is already earmarked for these larger scale acquisitions. So having an understanding on like, okay, this is what a $250,000 win like something in Coliseum can actually do for us, and then figuring out how you can turn something like that into a maybe a $5 or $10 million raise later on, that would be very successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're a Super Team Canada member. We are in Canada right now. For Canadian founders specifically, I mean, there's been a ton going on in the background in terms of like the Stablecoin Act and the funding that is going to come with that. I'm wondering, how do you see being based in Canada helping or hurting or not really mattering perhaps when it comes to raising and building as a Solana founder?
Yeah. I think that the super teams in general, and apologies for my video interruption, 1 second. So I think that being a part of a super team organization, and ideally here inside of Super Team Canada, gives you the opportunity to get connected to a number of different folks who are going to be able to help you out long term with whatever your success is going to be. Obviously, the super teams are all wanting to be the best, right? And I'm biased for Super Team Canada here, but I recognize that there are other ones that are also looking to succeed and are also looking for success metrics. These are groups that want to see people raise, develop new products, organize something like the next Titan coming out of Super Team Canada, right? These are the areas where I think people want to help you succeed, and there's a lot of different opportunities to figure out the shortcuts in raising a bit or in starting a business or in raising capital. So I think, I think joining a super team like Super Team Canada is definitely going to help you not make the easy mistakes. Let's put it that way.
That's good. We do our best to help you not make the easy mistakes. That's our number one goal every day.
I mean, it's the success metrics of outcomes, right? It's like, what does it mean to make it so that you don't have you can either win big or win small, or lose big or lose small. If you can get to the
do you
point
have the
where
Bonk dog in your room right now? Is that?
I am taking care of a puppy. I'm sorry, he's causing problems for me. I've been trying to have that not be a problem, but yeah, I'm taking care of a family dog right now.
That's very cute, very cute. It's okay. We're almost wrapped up here, guys. We're in the last section talking specifically about people entering into the Coliseum Frontier startup competition. Put your questions in the chat now if you have them. We will get to them at the end of this short little clip. But Noam, today is April 8th. The Coliseum started on the 6th. It's got 250K check on the line. If you were new to the ecosystem, what would you be focusing on this week? Today, this week, what's your goals? What's your priorities if you're entering into the Coliseum?
Yeah, so I think if you're going into this, it's your first week, right? You're trying to figure out what's going to be successful for you. Figure out either, is this something that I'm doing myself, or is this something that I'm doing initially with a team? Ideally, you already have a team organized and set up, and they can be very successful. But if you have a gap in terms of, hey, I want to release this product, or I want to push something out, what does that look like, and how do you make sure that that's going to be people that you want to build with? The unfortunate answer for a lot of the different groups that I've invested in, or the other products that I've worked on, team matters more than anything again. So if you are starting out right now, I would make sure that you don't have any issues with your teammates. Make sure that you're filling out all the different gaps in terms of what does it take to be operational, and then go from there.
That's interesting. Founders often struggle with blind spots. I mean, we love what we're building, and we're usually very passionate about it. What advice, aside from your team and building out your team, would you give to early stage founders trying to prove their concept?
Get to the point where you already have a small win being shown, right? Pitch decks and ideas and projections are useful. They're interesting to have, and they're interesting to show off. But they are not as exciting or something as being able to show that, like, hey, even if we've got 5 users, right? We've got a product that's it's live. It could be in beta. It could be in testing, right? It could be in any success there. But going from, hey, I have a really cool idea, to, hey, I have a product, and being able to showcase that, like, people are using this and I am getting feedback, I'm engaging with them, that is going to be a much better way to make sure that people aren't going to be able to say no, right? Like, that's what we're really looking for here. And just the mental processes that it takes to go from, hey, this is an idea, to this is something that's live, is going to be huge.
Yeah, to go from something that's an idea to something that's live, let's go back to a quick early stages of Bonk. When you started, you must have had a bunch of ideas, and you probably struggled a lot with scope and inbound, and making sure that you guys stayed focused. So how did you and how do you currently decide what to build next? Because I know you guys have so much on the roadmap of what you want to do. Your idea board must be just full of 1,000 different people giving 1,000 different ideas of which direction you should go in. Do you collectively try to understand where the narrative is taking you, or the loudest voices? How do you prioritize kind of all these opinions that are kind of coming your way when you're building your product, and how do you make sure you maintain your scope?
Yeah, the lucky thing around working with Bonk has been that there's a number of different partners or organizations that we've done a number of different joint ventures with, right? So coming up with products and ideas have been easy to figure out, hey, this is how we connect the availability that we have to the scope of the product that we want to build, and make sure that that's going to be successful. What you want to do is stay away from the idea of, like, oh, this could be cool if we do that, right? And one thing that I'll highlight here is, like, we talked about the idea of doing like a Bonk stable coin at one point, right? Something around the idea of like, oh, how is there going to be rewards or benefits or values for transacting in Bonk USD? And that sounds interesting, on the surface, and it's something where I think there's a number of different stable coins inside of the ecosystem that are being run by various different products that make sense. Especially if they're able to utilize it much more heavily inside their DeFi ecosystems, or if it's something where you're able to much more heavily utilize the yield or the benefits that are going on. But for something like a dog themed stablecoin, come on, like that's something that's interesting on paper, but probably doesn't get to the point where it's going to be a massive success later on down the line. So from there, I think it's the idea of going from, hey, I would love to do this and it sounds cool, into, is this the right thing for me to be building right now, and is this going to be more beneficial for what we have?
Yeah.
Last one, Fib. Last question of the day.
Last question. Are there any projects from past Coliseum hackathons that impressed you? And given that, do you have one last piece of advice that you'd give to every founder watching right now?
Yeah, I think, I've invested in a number of the different hackathon projects that have impressed me, so I don't think I'm going to single out just one of them for this. I think what you're really going to want to see, or the things that you're really going to want to do, is, again, just get to the point where you have an ambitious idea, you're super interested in terms of like, what is it going to be able to pull off, or what can it do later on down the line. But again, just get to the point where your Coliseum project and what you ship is going to have those immediate small wins, and those things where you're going to be able to showcase like, this has real usage, this is something that's exciting. And it isn't just an idea, right? Like, shipping something and putting it into production is worth any number of pitch decks or ideas or projections on what something could be in the future.
Cool. Thank you very much, Dom. One last question from the audience before we let you go play with your puppy and take it for a good walk. What's the main things? Andrea is asking in the chat, what's the main things you look for when you are building a team?
Yeah, one part of that is definitely going to be team chemistry, right? In terms of how are people working together, how do they solve problems, how do they solve arguments going across this. Having people who are able to work together confidently is going to be a pretty important area. And I think that goes into the idea of like, if you're setting in for the long haul of a multi-year, setup for working with people, you need to be able to win and lose together and to see those sorts of successes.
Cool. Thank you very much, Nam. Thank you for joining us. Any last words before we kick you out of the stage?
Nope. Thank you very much for having me and my distracting companion. I was not expecting to have to deal with him during this, so apologies for the background noise.
That's no problem. We love puppies, of course.
Yes, we do. Thank you again, Nam.
Thanks, guys.
And we're back. Excellent interview with Nam. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a few minutes to kind of go over some more information about what Super Team is, what we do, how you can get involved, and what you should sign up for. So if you are anywhere else in the world, if you're in the UK, if you're in Germany, Singapore, Vietnam, there is a super team available for you to reach out to. There's 26 super teams around the world. Find out if your country has one, get in touch with them, and they have resources and support available for you. However, we are obviously Super Team Canada. You can tell by the maple leaf on our super team. And so we focus on supporting Canadians in the founder ecosystem. We have co-working Fridays every single Friday in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. If you do want to meet real people in your city and work together and get ideas and feedback and build a little bit of your own little network, you can definitely come to the Friday co-working. Check out our Luma for all the upcoming events. We also do some very fun mixers and networking events and nice founder dinners. If you're interested in that kind of thing, they'll be available on our Luma as well. And of course, we do have the upcoming Coliseum Frontier Startup Competition. I've shared the link in the chat there as well. Please sign up and register for the Frontier Hackathon. That will let us know that you are serious about building a startup and that we will try to include you as much as possible in our upcoming activities and feed as many resources and workshops your way to help you win. Fib, I know there's a few other things that you want to chat about. While the QR code is on the screen right there where people can sign up, why don't you share some of the awesome, amazing stuff that we offer as a Super Team Canada?
Absolutely. So every year we have a resource library with a ton of resources from both within the Solana ecosystem, dev tooling, etc., but also from big accelerators and VCs in Canada who put out resources for founders. And we generally have like pitch feedback, office hours, workshops, as Simon mentioned. And we will also have some exclusive opportunities for mentorship, getting a dedicated mentor, credits, AWS credits, as well as credits from some of our members, and a whole ton more. Building with Super Team Canada is 100% the way to go. And if you're a founder building right now and you need more resources, maybe you're running out of runway, or you just are not sure how to get to the next level, you should definitely join the Frontier Hackathon. The QR code is there to register, and join us in Telegram as well to get more access to those resources.
Absolutely. That's where most of the chatting does happen, is in our different Telegram groups. We do have one for all of Canada, but we also have one specifically for locals in Vancouver, locals in Calgary and Edmonton, obviously one for the Toronto Vibe Station here, Ottawa and Montreal, as well as Halifax. So if you're in any of those cities, you can meet up and join your local Telegram group. Of course, that's available on the website, superteam.ca, if you do want to join the chats. But also, I'd say obviously follow the X account and check out our Luma calendar for all of our upcoming events. I think if you hit all three of those, you should be able to get access to all the information. We do have an Instagram account right now. It's coming soon, as well as a LinkedIn. If you're OG and you want to follow us on LinkedIn, there's definitely a lot of information that comes out there. So check us out. I think that's basically it for the call to action. I think sign up for the arena for Coliseum Frontier and ping us if you need help or need to know where to start. I think we're good, Fib. Is that it? How do you feel that this went? Good resources available for people watching the stream?
Oh yeah, incredible. A ton of insight. Thank you, Nam, for joining us. I am very excited about the upcoming hackathon and being able to use some of these tidbits of wisdom to support teams. Yeah, went great. Thank you. And thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much. $2.5 million of funding ready to be deployed, 250K of prizes. It's there up for grabs, and we want to help you win. So reach out to us, let us know. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you.